So Nefer, Furina, Arlecchino, or Zhongli. This is probably one of the most stacked banners we've seen in a while when it comes to characters that are usually considered good and are being in the same game phase. In this video, I'll just be explaining each character of these. I'll be listing their pros, cons, and then at the end, I'll give you the roadmap or the conclusion on which characters you should wish for depending on what you need or what you have on your account. Before we continue that though, if you're trying to get any of these characters, I would recommend getting your Genesis crystals from eliteshop.gg. Eliteshop is a game top-up website where you can get different games currencies including Genshin Impact 20% cheaper or more. Check it out in the link in the description or the pinned comment. Alright, so starting off with the characters, as I said before, I'm going to go through them one by one. The first character we have is going to be Nefer. Nefer is going to be the only new character in this patch, and she's going to be a Dendro main DPS. At the end of the day, she's just going to be a charge attack main DPS, but her damage is going to be considered Lunar Bloom damage, which is the new type of bloom we have in the game right now in the new Not Cry region. Now moving on to Nefer's pros. The first pro about Nefer, and the main pro that you'd want on any main DPS, is that she's going to have top tier damage potential. She's going to be definitely top 3 main DPSs in the game, talking about like her best teams. So she's definitely going to be an S tier damage dealer. She's also going to have AoE. I've seen so many rumors before talking about that her damage is only single target, but I think it is confirmed that she's going to have AoE now, which is going to make her damage even better. So she's going to be very good clearing content anywhere, whether it's a single target or AoE content, and she's going to be dealing huge amounts of damage, again, in her top teams. But yeah, there's just simply not many main DPSs that are actually going to rival her. That's going to be super good. The second part about Nefer is that the meta right now is for her. She's going to be dealing that Lunar Bloom damage, and right now all of the content is going to be fixed towards that in general, and she's going to have a huge advantage, and we're probably going to see even more supports in the future for her. You know, just a whole Not Cry lunar damage and stuff like that. It's just still growing. It just started. So she's definitely still going to be relevant in the meta for a while, which is pretty good. This, you know, the thing that you get with getting a new character. The content is going to be easier to clear. There's still going to be new characters that have been coming out, like, that are going to be good for her or updating her, which is always going to be super good and appreciated. So yeah, those are really her pros. There's not many, but this is what you need from a main DPS. There's not really much you would expect from them, except they deal high damage, and the meta is their meta right now. That's pretty much it. Now moving on to her cons. The first con about Nefer is that she's going to need Lauma. Now when I say need, it's a little bit of an over exaggeration. She doesn't need her to function. You can play Nefer in a team without Lauma, obviously, and she's going to do just fine, but she's definitely not going to be a top tier DPS without Lauma. She's going to lose a very significant amount of her damage, which obviously is not good, especially if you're trying to min-max your meta. This is not going to be optimal. So if you're trying to make her the S tier DPS, you know, that she is, in that case, you definitely need Lauma in your team. And without Lauma, in my opinion, she's going to drop like a whole tier in DPS, in my opinion. She's going to be like an A tier DPS without Lauma. But with Lauma, she's going to be top tier. So if you're trying to get Nefer, Lauma is going to be very essential in my opinion, at least if you're trying to like maximize your potential. Which is the biggest con about Nefer in my opinion. Her teams are going to be very limited and you don't have many options, especially for a Lauma slot in the team. There's not really many supports that can replace her, or any supports at all. Another con about her is that she's a little bit complex to play. It's not a big con. You can definitely get used to her pretty fast, and it's not super bad, but you'll need to worry about some stacks. You'll need to worry about the bloom cores and stuff like that, which can be a little bit complex. A lot of it can be autopiloted pretty easily. So again, it's not a big con, but it's definitely something to look out for. She's not the simplest character to play for sure. But yeah, that's pretty much it for Nefer. Now moving on to the second character on this banner, which is going to be Furina. Now Furina has been out for a while, and she's just mainly just a support slash sub DPS, and that's pretty much it really for her. Well, on her pros, I mean, she's been out for a while now. She's definitely one of the best characters that have ever been released in the game. Her pros is that she's going to have great off-field damage, one of the best sub DPSs ever. She's just going to be dealing a lot of good hydro damage off-field, which is obviously going to be super good. The second and best pro about her is that she's going to give huge damage bonus to your team. This is the main thing about Furina. If you equip her on your team and you do the HP thing, make sure it happens, obviously you're going to get huge damage bonus buffs to all of your teammates, which is super good, plus some healing and stuff like that. She's definitely usually going to raise your team's damage by a lot, and for some teams she's genuinely just going to make or break them, especially for some main DPSs. They definitely just need Furina. The last part about her is that she's kind of versatile to use in general. There has been a lot of teams that can use Furina very well, obviously from her own region, like DPSs from Fontaine, like Nuviet, for example, Risley, whatever. But then there's also like DPSs from outside of that region, especially Natlin, for example, or even Mondstadt and stuff like that, that can just use her pretty well, which is super good. If you get Furina, she's gonna be super versatile, and I guarantee you have some main DPS on your account that Furina is just gonna make them better. So yeah, that's it about her in general. She's just what I would consider a general super high value character, probably one of the highest values we've seen in the game, to be honest, especially for that long. It's been like 2 years since she has been released, and she's still slaying. So yeah, she's just simply one of the best supports slash sub DPSs in the game. Now moving on to her cons, the first con is that the HP drain mechanic is gonna be a little complex. Again, it's not super bad. You can probably just get used to it in a while, and just make sure you play her with the right characters, and you're gonna be fine usually. Even if you don't use her to her full potential, it's gonna be fine. So it's not really a huge problem, but she's definitely not usable everywhere. You can just slap her everywhere and she's gonna work. You need to be mindful of some things on your team, like the HP drain. You gotta make sure someone is losing HP or gaining HP or healing, whatever, for you to make sure to gain enough stacks for her to give you more damage bonus. But it's definitely not a big problem at all. The biggest problem about Furina right now, my opinion, is that she's gonna be off the Nodcry meta, it seems, and that's simply just related to how Nodcry characters work. At least from what we're seeing now, most of them are just gonna be dealing some sort of lunar damage, like reactions, and those reactions just don't scale with damage bonus. And damage bonus is like the biggest pro you're getting about Furina, as we explained before. So since damage bonus is not really something that these new characters are looking for, Furina is not gonna be a good teammate for them. So at least for the Nodcry region, we're seeing that she's not really a character that would work for them, which is unfortunate. So if you're trying to tap in the new like Nodcry meta and you're trying to play one of the new DPSs, then Furina is going to be pretty much useless there, which is not good. And that's probably going to be the case for the rest of the whole Nodcry region, to be honest. I'm not sure, but I would guess none of them are really going to scale with damage bonus. It's mainly just going to be EM and stuff like that. So yeah, Furina is not really made for Nodcry characters at all. So if you're highly interested in any of them and stuff like that, then Furina might not be the best option. She's good with many other characters, but not Nodcry characters. The third character we have on this banner is going to be Zhongli. Zhongli is just a Geo support shielder, really. He's just going to be giving you one of the best shields in the game that's going to protect you, and mainly that's about it, to be honest. For his pros, as I said before, obviously he's going to have the best shield in the game. Super good, super easy to use. You just hold your skill and you're invincible for a while, like literally. It's one of the most comfiest characters that has ever been released in Genshin, and honestly, I still use him to this day. Sometimes you just cannot, you don't want to dodge, or you're not playing the game like that, you just slap in Zhongli on your team, do your shield, and just move and attack however you want. You're not getting knocked out, you're not losing HP, you're not dying, just forget about that. That's it. One of the most tankiest shields in the game. And he's simply just going to make the game much more easier and comfortable to play. Second pro is that he's just going to be super easy to build and free to play friendly. You don't really need much on Zhongli, except, you just want to stack HP on him, and that's it. But yeah, he's just pretty easy to build. And the last pro about him is that he's going to be very flexible. As I said before, at the end of the day, he's going to be Geo, so he's not going to mess with your reactions, and he's just going to be a character that's offering you a shield and resistant shred, which is needed on basically every team, or not needed, but usually at least appreciated. So usually he's one of those characters that literally you can slap anywhere. Like there are flexible characters like Furina, for example, that I was talking about before. She's flexible, but she's not going to work anywhere. You need to make sure at least some stuff are satisfied before you can use Furina on your team properly. With Zhongli, that's really not the case. You can literally use Zhongli everywhere. Like 99% of the teams on this game, you can probably use Zhongli there. Now, obviously, it might not be the best option always, but he's always going to be usable. And you're always going to have that shield that's going to protect you and make you use your brain less, which is pretty good. Now for his cons, honestly, it's not really a con, to be honest, directly, but he just can be a DPS loss in a lot of teams. What I mean by that is that there's usually a better character you can use on your team better than Zhongli, because, you have a lot of characters that can just support your main DPS. Just give him some buffs or give you more damage than Zhongli and use them as a sub DPS, stuff like that, like batteries, healers, whatever. With Zhongli, he's just going to give you a shield, some resistant shred, but that's pretty much it. His support is going to be very limited to that. So if you care only about maximizing your damage, then Zhongli is usually going to be a DPS loss. There's not really many teams where Zhongli is needed for you to maximize like the main DPS potential, except like fully Geo teams and stuff like that. But in general, there are better options than Zhongli. So you should use Zhongli as like, okay, I'm going to lose some damage on this team, but I'm going to be much more comfortable and it's going to be much easier to play. So I'll just do it. That's the sort of mentality you should have with playing Zhongli. But if you're trying to maximize each slot in your team and you're trying to push your team's damage to the maximum, then Zhongli is is usually not the best idea. That's mainly his con, which makes him just unnecessary, basically. He's technically like just very unnecessary for you to maximize your damage, but he's a very good comfort character to have on your account. And now finally moving on to the last character on this banner, which is going to be Arlecchino. Arlecchino is just going to be a Pyro main DPS. That's pretty much it really for her playstyle. Just a normal attacks, Pyro main DPS. So normal attacks, she deals damage. That's it. For pros, she's also going to have very high damage. Definitely less damage than Nefer in general, even on their best teams, but in general, she's just going to have very decent damage. I'd still consider her to be S tier damage at this point in the game, at least from what we're seeing. She might be power creeps in the future, but for right now, I'd still consider her to be S tier for sure. So yeah, she's just going to have very high damage, which as I said is the main thing that you're going to need from a main DPS. The second pro about Arlecchino is that she's going to have very flexible teammates. Usually at the end of the day, you're going to play her in a vape team, so in terms of like team types, she's not going to be that flexible. You're going to have to play her in a vape team because obviously you just want to vape your hits for you to just deal like almost double the damage. But when it comes to actual like teammates in terms of like her vape teams, she's going to be super flexible. You have many Hydro supports or Hydro appliers that you can choose from, like Shingshou, Yellen, just whatever. You have many like shielders, sustains, whatever. So as long as you're playing her in a vape team or any sort of team where she can vape most of her hits, you have a lot of variety of characters that you can choose from, and Arlecchino is going to work with most of them. She's going to be super good. And last pro about her is that she's going to be very free-to-play friendly and easy to play. She's going to have a lot of like free-to-play or at least non-expensive weapon options, even 3-star weapons. She can work with them pretty decently. And she's going to be very easy to play too. At the end of the day, you're just going to be auto-attacking and that's it. She doesn't have like any hidden mechanic, at least none that you need to be conscious of or anything like that. You just basically auto-attack and that's it. Now moving on to her cons, the main con about her really is that she's going to need a shielder because her interruption is going to be very bad. And if you're playing her without a shielder, it's going to be very annoying. If you're not very good at dodging, she's going to be annoying to play. You cannot even heal her if you get hit because of her bond of life thing. So you definitely need a shielder for interruption, also for sustain, because if you get hit a couple of times, then you're usually gone. She's the only con about her. It's going to be a little annoying, but as long as you get a shielder, it doesn't even need to be a top tier shielder. It could be anyone, and usually she's going to do fine with them. The second con about her is that as a main DPS, she has power creep danger by now. I mean, it's been like what, a year and a half or more. It's almost gonna be 2 years since she was released, and that's probably from what we've been seeing, like the time frame for usual main DPSs, especially simple ones like her, where usually about this time they're gonna start getting low power creeps. Now Genshin as a whole, power creep doesn't really matter as much because she's probably gonna get more supports in the future and get a little better, and you're probably gonna still be able to clear with her everything anyways, so she's fine. You can put her in like the weaker side of Abyss and stuff like that, and she's gonna clear for you pretty well. But if we're talking about like top tier damage, I would probably think she's gonna fall off in the next like few months because we're probably gonna see more main DPSs that are just gonna be dealing much more damage than her for her to be considered S tier. At least probably, this is not sure, but she's very likely to be power crept and not be like at the top of the game soon at least. So that's a danger. Didn't happen yet, but I would suspect it's about time for her to be a little power crept. Alright, so knowing that, for the final conclusion, which characters should you get? Starting off with the highest overall value pull in this banner, in my opinion, honestly, I still think it's gonna be Furina. Furina is just super good, and usually she's just simply a high value pull for your account. She's gonna have a very huge amount of teams where you can use her, and she's gonna be super good there, outside of Not Cry, where I still think she's gonna be a very good value character to have on your account even now. And I think even in the future, outside of Not Cry, she's probably gonna have even more value. So yeah, to this day, I still think Furina is a good high value pull. And if we're comparing like pure value characters that you can have on your account, I think Furina wins that contest pretty clearly. So I would recommend getting Furina if you're trying to just make your account in general better, like as a future investment. Now, if you more like need a main DPS specifically, in that case, it's pretty simple in my opinion. If you have Lauma, or at least you're planning to get Lauma, maybe on her rerun or something like that, in that case, definitely go for Nefer. She's just like the new main DPS in town. Her meta is her meta right now. You know, she's just a new character, so she's just gonna deal more damage, probably gonna get even better in the near future. So Nefer is gonna be the option, but only if you have Lauma, or at least you're planning to get Lauma. I think it's fine if you get Nefer right now without Lauma and then get Lauma in the future. That's okay. But if you're never planning to get Lauma, in that case, I'd say just get Arlecchino. Arlecchino is simply just gonna be better than Nefer without Lauma, and she's just easier to play, just a simple main DPS that you can get and you cannot go wrong with. So if you just need a main DPS DPS and you're not concerned with Nefer or Laum or whatever, then Arlecchino can still be a very good option too, and she's probably going to be able to clear everything for a pretty long time ahead. That's for sure. For Zhongli, I think it's probably like an easy skip on this. He's just more of like a comfort character. If you want him, then get him. If not, then you definitely don't need him in any like scenario at all. You have plenty of like free to play shielders and stuff like that if we're talking about like purely maximizing your team's damage. But he's a very good comfort character for sure. So if you want like a comfort shielder, then Zhongli is always a good option there, and you can go for him. But he's not necessary. But yeah, tell me what you guys are getting in the comments. Please don't forget to leave a like, subscribe to the channel. I will see you guys in the next video. Peace.